This creature will make your skin crawl in at number 10. Now we're talking about the Onichapora, otherwise known as the velvet worm. These guys have been around for about 500 million years, but don't be fooled by their small size. There are 180 different variations of the velvet worm, and they can be found in moist, dark places all around the tropics like Australia, New Zealand. They have lots of tiny stubby feet, but each foot has a hooked claw. They are also known to be ambush predators, so they like to hunt other small insects at night. In order to catch their prey, they will squirt a sticky slime that quickly hardens. After the prey is immobilized, the velvet worm will bite into it, inject them with digestive saliva that will help them liquefy their insides so they'll become easier to eat.
Now all that remains is for the velvet worm to rip off pieces of the unlucky bug, soften them up with digestive saliva, and then down the hatch. Or whatever passes for the hatch in a velvet worm.
Okay, what the heck is this thing? He might look small, but he is definitely one of the scariest worms I've ever heard of. Imagine being swarmed by a group of these things while you're camping in the Australian outback. Eye comes climbing onto this list at number 9.
And the nocturnal animals emerge from their hiding places to hunt. This is the eye, a lemur, and probably the world's strangest mammal.
I don't know if this creature is one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen, or it's actually kind of cute. I don't know. It looks like it crawled straight out of hell and had one of the roughest days of its life. Eyes are actually thought to be evil spirits. People who are native to Madagascar say that the eye represents an omen of bad luck. So for this reason, they will be killed on sight. A lot of people in this area will resort to illegal hunting, or they will destroy their habitats. All of these things have put these creatures at risk of becoming extinct. But let's get back to another reason why these creatures are so damn creepy. They have a really unusual feeding ritual known as percussive foraging. So basically what that is, well, they will tap on trees to locate bugs, and then they will chew a hole into the wood using their long incisors, and these things are slanted forward. Once a small hole has been eaten out of the tree, the eye will insert his creepy super long middle finger to pull the bugs out. If I saw this thing lurking in the jungle with his long middle finger, I'd be running in the opposite direction, and you know what? That's a little bit rude, buddy. You flipping me the finger? I mean, why does it have to be his middle finger as long as one? Why can't it just be like... Hyena makes its way onto this list at number 8. There are many reasons why you wouldn't want to come face to face with the hyena. First off, hyenas love to come out at night. They can live in a wide range of different habitats, such as the savanna, forest, the desert, the mountain terrain, and they also live in the Lion King. They're actually cannibals, and they will attack and eat other hyenas, including their young. So yeah, they're pretty savage beasts. And probably one of the scariest sounds that you'll ever hear is the sound of their laughter. Apparently if you hear them laugh, you're in a whole lot of trouble, because it signals that the hyena is excited because they found their next meal. And in case you guys haven't figured it out yet, their next meal is you.
Roxy. Yeah, let's go back it just a little bit.
About 95% of their diet comes from their own kills, which is usually carried out by a pack of 80 hyenas. So if you spot one, you're probably gonna die, because that's one and there's 79 elsewhere. Pretty close by. Swimming into this list, and at number 7 we have the wolffish. And yeah, they're as terrifying as they sound. Thankfully they are in the water, so we can easily avoid them. Wolffish are very vicious predators with a large head, powerful jaws, and super large canine teeth. They can reach lengths of up to 5 feet long, and they won't hesitate to bite humans if they are provoked. I didn't even know that these things existed in the first place. Well, take a look at this clip right here. You'll probably never want to go swimming ever again.
Over she comes. Ah. But fantastic, here we go. That's a result, that's a result, that's lovely. So here we are, this is the wolffish.
I think I'm gonna have nightmares about their razor sharp teeth. And after doing the research for this list, I'm giving myself a 7 p.m. curfew. Number 6, we have cougars. And no, I'm not talking about the older woman you see in bars hitting on younger men. Although that is a pretty scary thing to watch. I'm just kidding, but I'm talking about these guys right here. If you see a cougar in the wild, chances are he's already seen you and he's been watching you. He's been watching you for a pretty long time. Cougars are probably one of the most terrifying animals that you can encounter in the North American woods. They like to stalk their prey and they can weigh up to 200 pounds. You should never turn your back on a cougar because it'll be the last thing that you do. They can jump up to 20 feet in the air and they can reach speeds of up to 35 to 45 miles per hour. Cougars like to hunt everything from moose to insects, so basically nothing is safe. Let's keep this list moving. In at number 5, vampire bats. Did you guys know that vampire bats live in colonies that contain anywhere from 100 to 1,000 members? Colonies that have only 100 bats can drink the entire blood supply of 25 cows per year. I mean, that's a pretty unsettling fact. If you put that into perspective, a cow has about 39 liters of blood and humans only have about 5 liters. So if their favorite thing on the menu changes from cow to humans, we're in a lot of trouble here. A larger colony of vampire bats could kill 1,900 humans a year, and this could be a serious threat to our own survival. And let's not forget about their razor sharp fangs that can easily pierce through your skin. Vampire bats also have the ability to infect humans with rabies. It might be rare, but it does happen. So let's just hope for our sake that vampire bats don't get desperate enough to start snacking on us, because yeah, that could be a pretty serious problem. And not to mention, I would probably never want to leave the house ever again. Scorpion stings us in at number 4. Scorpions are nocturnal creatures. They like to spend their days hiding under rocks and in small crevices, and then they come out at nighttime and hunt in the darkness. They're carnivorous creatures and they paralyze their prey using their venomous stinger. If that doesn't sound terrifying, then I don't know what is.
Scorpions tend to stay away from us, but they also love the dark spaces that houses and old buildings provide. Your typical scorpion is passive and defensive, but some scorpions are known to be aggressive. When hunting, they use their pinchers to grab hold of their prey before injecting it with venom from their stinger. While scorpions use venom to kill or sedate their meals, only around 40 types actually have venom that's dangerous for humans.
Okay, did you guys know that a scorpion can live a full year without food? I mean, I could probably do an hour. And they can stay underwater for about 48 hours and survive. So yeah, scorpions are beasts and they're pretty much indestructible, like a cockroach. Larger scorpions can eat large prey such as small rodents and lizards, but basically they will eat whatever they think is appetizing. Oh, and a hungry female scorpion will eat her own babies if her food sources are scarce. Surprisingly enough, scorpions aren't that dangerous to humans, and if an adult is stung, you know, you're gonna live. You're gonna be alright. But I don't know anyone who would willingly want to be stung by a scorpion, and I definitely don't want to stumble across one when I'm walking out at nighttime. Well, we've already established that my curfew that I've set on myself is 7 p.m. so I'm never gonna see nighttime. Crawling up this list or down this list, this depends on how you see it, we have the tarantula. A lot of people's fears. A lot of us give tarantulas a bad reputation because of how they are portrayed in movies and because their scary appearances. But in reality, they're actually pretty peaceful creatures when it comes to interacting with humans, but I still have zero interest in ever meeting one of these things. Tarantulas have been known to be able to eat birds, but majority of them like to snack on whatever insects that they can find. Some larger tarantulas will feed on snakes, frogs, and mice. They're also known as ambush predators, so they will hide and wait for their food, attack them when they get close, and then attempt to kill them as quickly as possible. And they do this by using their venom. If that's not scary enough, they turn their prey into soup before eating them. So they will inject strong digestive chemicals into their prey, which causes their insides to liquefy, and then the tarantula will just suck it up. If you're still not convinced that these tarantulas are pretty terrifying, take a look at this clip. Is this real life right now? Alright, let's move on. Let's move on to the Tasmanian devil. This devil himself comes in at number 2 on our list. The Tasmanian devil live in the south of Australia. I have seen one, not in the wild because that would be terrifying. And they're known as carnivores. semi-nocturnal, and highly aggressive animals. They have one of the strongest bites in the animal world. Their bites are so strong that they can actually bite through a metal trap, so human bones could be a breeze to bite through. They also like to eat their own prey in a group setting, tearing the meat and limbs off of the carcass. On average, they eat about 15% of their body weight each day, but if they have the opportunity to eat more, they can eat about 40% of their body weight in just 30 minutes. How could something so small and this cute creature be so deadly and vicious?
This fiendish fighter may look cute, but its name says it all. The Tasmanian Devil.
Honey badger brings us to number 1. Okay, don't be fooled by this name. I know honey, when you put honey in a name, it's usually sweet, but in this case, I don't think so. Honey badgers have the ability to be extremely aggressive. They're known to bite the heads off of snakes and to munch on scorpions. They look friendly and cuddly, but trust me, you don't want to go anywhere near these things. For the honey badger, literally everything is on the menu. They've eaten things such as beetles, lizards, birds, crocodiles, and even large pythons. Oh, and they also snack on the highly venomous black mamba snake. Their teeth are also incredibly strong. They can bite down with enough force to break the shell of a tortoise. The honey badger is extremely intelligent as well. They have the ability to break through locks on fridges, and they will stack rocks into piles so that they can climb over walls. So basically none of us are safe. They are also some of the most fearless creatures, and that's exactly why I never want to meet a honey badger. Well, here's a clip I found for you guys of a honey badger battling a male lion. If I come face to face with a lion, I would just fall over and accept my fate. I mean, at that point, what can I really do? But this honey badger, well, he's pretty savage. I'm not savage.
Starting off at number 10 now, we have the Oldsmobile. This one comes from Thought Catalog. One user said, my daughter was driving from Wichita Falls, Texas to Oklahoma City on I-44 to catch our plane home to Philadelphia. It was 4:05 a.m. I remember because I was afraid we'd miss our flight and the highway was empty. We were almost out of Lawton city limits when we saw an older model car, light blue or silver, launch off an embankment, roll 3 or 4 times end over end. I could actually see a human fly through the air. I pulled over and called 911 and gave them the GPS coordinates of the overpass. I asked the dispatch if I should back down the highway and she told me not to because there was an officer less than 2 minutes away. 20 minutes later I got a call from the police asking exactly where it was. I repeated the info. The officer said he was sitting at that location and there was nothing there. Not a skid mark, broken glass or flattened grass. Nothing at all. When I got home, I googled it. This is what I found out. Exactly 10 years prior, a group of teenagers were speeding down a suburban road when they lost control, flipped over a guide rail and rolled down the embankment. All 6 kids were killed. They were driving a 1986 Oldsmobile. The time of the accident, 4:05 a.m. It's a classic case of a phantom crash. We've talked about that before on the channel. Some people dismiss them, but others say that ghosts are formed when people die in intense moments with unfinished business here on Earth. A car crash does seem like it might fit the bill there pretty well. Moving on to number 9 now, we have the cemetery. This one comes from Thought Catalog again, where one girl said, I live in a small town in South Texas. When I was 19, a boyfriend of mine, myself and 2 other friends were driving down an old back road towards a cemetery that hadn't been used since the 1800s. It was about 3 a.m. and we pulled up into the cemetery only to see off in the distance 4 white hooded figures circling a grave in the distance. We didn't stay long enough to investigate. We turned around and left real quick. Yeah, I think they made the right call there. People in hoods standing in a cemetery that hasn't been used in well over 100 years. They're probably not having a picnic, are they? No sandwiches there. Coming at number 8 now, we have the fog. This one comes from Thought Catalog again, where someone said, I was driving home from work about 2 a.m. It was a beautiful night, so I decided to take a route home that was more in the country instead of through town. I had to cross an old bridge that had been there probably 80 to 100 years. There's no houses or lights except my headlights. Just as my front tires hit the bridge, a red fog rolls across it. The hair stood up on the back of my neck and I got across that bridge as fast as possible. After I got across it, I looked in my mirror and the fog is gone, but it looked like someone was standing in the middle of the bridge. I mentioned it to my parents the next morning and my dad said he'd always heard stories about that bridge and supposedly a young lady hung herself from it. Nope. nope. If that happened to me, I would just leave that bridge alone. That bridge belongs to the ghost girl forever. Let her keep it. I'll go around, I'll swim. At the number 7 spot now, guys, we have The Whisper. This is another one from Thought Catalog, where a guy said, driving home from work one night, exhausted after working a double shift, I was on the freeway and fell asleep behind the wheel. I heard a woman's voice very gently whisper in my ear. She said, "Wake up." Just loud enough to wake me up, but not startle me awake. I woke up just in time to avoid colliding with a bunch of rogue construction barrels. That was like 20 years ago, and I never forgot that voice. Well, okay, it's great that they heard the whisper. It might have actually saved their life, but it's still really creepy. What do you guys think the explanation is for this? Was it just a voice in their head, perhaps, or something a bit more supernatural? At the number 6 spot now, we have Dog's Eyes. Shep Big Strong Fella on Reddit said, I was driving a van across Switzerland on the Autobahn in the dark, very little lighting as I came down the hillside into a valley. I noticed what I thought was a man running down the right-hand lane in the distance at 2 to 2:30 a.m. There was some moonlight. As I get closer, he's running really strange, like loping. So as I'm going past him, out of politeness and not to blind him, I flick my main beams off, and as I do it, he turns his head around and his eyes are reflected like a dog. Every hair stood up on my body. I put my foot down. There were no woods around or houses, and the nearest town must have been 30 miles away. Truly terrifying. I agree. I think that's very creepy. Whenever someone shows a sort of animalistic nature, even if it's like the accidental reflection from their eyes, it's pretty terrifying stuff, especially alone on a road at night. Moving on to number 5 now, we have The Stranger. This one comes from Reddit user Smuffy72. He said, I used to work second shift. I got off around 11:30 one night, drove over to my girlfriend's house and stayed there for a few hours. A pretty bad thunderstorm started up and I decided to head home. My dog hates storms and didn't want to leave her alone. There's 2 ways back to my house from hers. One runs through town and takes 20 minutes or so. One is a single lane dirt road that only takes about 8 minutes. This night I chose the dirt road. There are no houses on this dirt road for about an 8-mile stretch. It's raining hard as well. I'm in the middle of the Alabama woods creeping down this dirt road. I come around a curve and there is a very large man standing right in the middle of the road wearing a black hoodie with his hood up, dark colored pants and dark shoes. I slammed on the brakes and stopped. He takes a few steps towards my truck and I freaked out and threw my truck into reverse, backed up, and he runs towards me and then darts into the woods. Due to being in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have cell reception, so as soon as I got home, I called the cops and reported it. 2 nights later, a woman had a similar experience. He actually tried to get into her car. Police searched the woods several times and they found a camp but never found the actual guy. The thing I find crazy is that guy had a camp. When you think of a camp, you might think of like a summer camp or going camping with your friends. A murderer's camp though, not so appealing. Moving on to number 4 now, guys, we have The Ent. This person on Reddit said, I was driving in the dark with my wife down a small country lane in rural Kent, UK. There were trees on both sides of the road. This particular part was a long steep hill going up and it was a fairly foggy night. Just 2 cars, me in front and this guy behind me, not close, who'd been there for a few miles. Suddenly, this giant shadowy tree, ant-like figure literally loomed up and grew out of the road at the top of the hill, practically myself and started to slow. My wife made an odd noise as she noticed as well. It seemed like it was the headlights of the guy behind me and some tree branches, and they were all reflecting onto the fog like a screen. Not unexplainable, but definitely the scariest in the moment. Yeah, I can see where he's going with this one. I'm sure that stuff is totally explainable. Probably is just a strange shadow or the human brain playing tricks, or maybe it was an actual ent and the trees have finally come to life to take their revenge upon humanity. They're all equally valid theories. Next up at number 3 now, we have the friendly advice. This one came from Thought Catalog, where someone said, I had pulled over one night to fuss at my 2 younger children. A car pulled up beside me and told me that there had been a wreck over the next hill and traffic was stopped. They suggested that I take a side road that detoured the wreck. I thanked them and they left. I decided to not take the road because I'm from the country and didn't didn't want to get lost. As I drove by the detour road, I looked over and saw the couple had stopped and gotten out of their car. There was nothing but woods all around. It was just getting dark and that's all I could see. The next morning, as I drove by the same road, I saw the dead end sign just past where the couple had gotten out of their car. It still gives me chills when I drive past it now, and it's been 15 years since it happened. That is terrifying. I mean, it's one thing being scared of nature or the dark or just kind of natural things around you, but how creepy would it be knowing that those people were probably planning on jumping you? Moving on to number 2 now, we have the flames. Volunteer Magic said, I was on a road trip with my wife at the time and her kid. I believe this happened after we passed through New Mexico and went into Texas. It was 3 a.m. and we came over a large hill and everything is on fire. Just fields and fields of fire. It looked like the goddamn apocalypse. I had no clue what I was looking at, but my wife at the time and her kid were completely asleep, so I had no one that could bear witness to this, and I didn't want to wake anyone up because, wow, how would you like it if you got woken up and everything was on fire? That does sound pretty terrifying. Can you guys even imagine waking up in the car and just seeing pure fire everywhere, as far as the eye can see? Some people commented suggesting that it's probably farmers doing controlled burns, a fairly common practice in tall grass prairies. That's a comforting explanation to hear now, but probably of no help when you're right in the middle of it. And finally, number 1 now, we have white t-shirt and jeans. This one also came from an anonymous user from Reddit who said, coming home from a night shift, driving down a back road I traveled literally thousands of times. On one side of the road there is a 6-foot drop onto train tracks. The other side runs vertically up a hillside approximately 25 miles. No guardrails. In my headlights I saw a young man dressed in a white shirt and dark pants suddenly dart out into the road from the hillside, stop in the middle of the road to look at my truck, and then sprint over to the other side and down the embankment. I slammed on my brakes, got out with the flashlight from under my seat and ran to the trackside thinking he had to be hurt. Nothing. Absolutely quiet except the sound of my truck engine. I got home, which took all of about 5 minutes in my mind since I was shaking so hard, and said something to my dad. He grinned from ear to ear and told me it was probably the guy who was killed on that road when my dad was in high school. White t-shirt and jeans was what he was wearing. Whoever hit him ditched his body on the tracks and just left. The sheriff found him the next morning. He does that every once in a while to people driving that road alone at night. Scared the crap out of you, didn't he? I laughed and nodded. Wow, the story was great, but honestly, the ending to it was a little bit weird. I wonder why they were laughing about that pretty horrifying experience. Probably just nervous laughter. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the military ghost. This one comes from a guy who said he did his military training at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. The barracks were at least 50 years old by this point. Every night, new recruits were told to stay awake for an hour and mop the floor until the next soldier was woken up to take over. One night, the guy, Jack, was sitting underneath the speakers trying to stay awake when a voice came out of them. Now usually it was one of his commanding officers barking orders to wake up, but this time it was different. A soft woman's voice could be heard, barely even a whisper. She said, "Private, get everyone outside right now. Right now, Private, everyone outside." He was surprised, not because it was a woman, as he did have female drill sergeants, but because the voice was so soft. Jack headed down the hallway where he found another guard also standing duty. He asked him if he had heard the voice. The guard said no. Jack thought it must have just been his imagination and didn't want to risk waking everyone up just because his mind was playing sleepy tricks on him. The rest of the night was normal and Jack put it to the back of his mind until weeks later. One day they had a 3-day field training exercise. On the last day they all sat around a fire and everyone swapped stories. The drill sergeant shared some stories of the base. Jack's sergeant told a story of the first female drill sergeant on that base. She was harassed so much that it was unrelenting, and then one day she snapped. She hung herself from some exposed water pipes using her belt. A few years later they plastered over the exposed pipes. The reason? So they could put the speakers up there on the wall. Next up at number 9 now, we have the wedding party. This one comes from Reddit user PyKing9000. He said when he was in high school he worked for a catering company, so his hours would often be very late. On one such night he was resetting a room for a wedding that was happening the next day. A co-worker told him to go upstairs and get some chairs from the room that had just hosted a wedding that night. When he got to the room he noticed there were still people in there chatting away and having a good time. He was confused and told told them the wedding had already ended. He took the chairs down and told his co-worker there were still guests up there. He asked if they needed anything else from that room or should they just wait for them to leave. It was the co-worker's turn to look confused now. He said he'd just been up to that room as well and didn't remember seeing anyone up there at all. They went up to the room and sure enough the room was completely empty and looked like it had been for hours. Some Redditors think this may have been a ghostly echo of a wedding that has already happened years ago, or perhaps they were spirits looking to recreate the good times they'd had in life. Moving on to number 8 now, we have a story from UltiMabdon316. He said that one night he was working at a fancy hotel next to an airport. One night he got a call from a lady in room 204. She said there was arguing, loud banging and crying from the room next to her. He checked the computer, but the system showed there was nobody in that room due to maintenance issues. Confused, he called his supervisor to see what to do. She told him to call the on-site security and follow them up with a key. When they stepped out of the elevator, they heard the sound of crying. It was loud. His heart started racing as he neared the door. The security guard put the key in, opens up the door and flicks on the light. As they enter the room, the shower is on, steam coming out from underneath the door. There was only one lamp on in the room. The air was very cold and then he saw her. A woman, stripped down to her underwear, was lying on the bed sobbing. As they approached, she rolled over. She was pale, covered in blood, and just staring at them. At that moment, they realized the shower had stopped and the door was open. There in the doorway was a huge, ominous-looking man. Security tased and arrested him. It turns out that he was a criminal who was hiding in hotel rooms to kidnap and sexually assault women who stayed there, sometimes murdering them afterwards. At number 7 now, we have swinging. Smashley Pimpson is the Reddit user who shared this story. He said that he worked in a department store where every year before Christmas he would have to stay overnight to sort out all the new merchandise. One year he was stuffing a duvet into a bag when all of a sudden a picture frame that was just hanging up a few aisles away crashed to the ground and smashed everywhere. He was too tired to care and went to the back to get a dustpan and brush. There were plastic bags of clothes hung up on a conveyor belt on the ceiling. As he looked up, he saw one single bag was swinging hard. It was banging around as if someone had just shoved it moments ago. No other bags were moving. He freaked out and quickly grabbed a dustpan and brush and left. However, when he got to the smashed picture frame, it was gone. All of it. None of the other employees there knew what he was talking about, and the memory of that night has never quite left him. At number 6 now, we have the girl. This one comes from Banksy420, who said they work in a restaurant that has its own bakery attached. All the bakery staff would always talk about the ghost of a little girl who haunted the whole place, but he didn't know that when he started the job. One day, things were moving quite slow, and so he did some prep work by himself in the kitchen. He was at the prep table, kind of zoning out and just listening to music. Then he felt someone right next to him, as if they were shoulder to shoulder, a sudden presence that wasn't there before. Then he heard a little girl's voice very sweetly say, "Hi Josh, how are you?" He said he even felt her breath as the words were spoken. He said it felt so vivid, but when he turned around, there was nobody there. He told his co-workers this, and they weren't too surprised. They were all quite familiar with the ghost of the little girl. They just learned to not answer her back. Moving on to number 5 now, we have the dolls. One girl said she used to work the night shift at a Greasy Spoon diner. There were usually a lot of drunk people there. Another waitress finished at 4 AM, so she was usually alone until 7 AM. One night her co-worker left and then returned just a few seconds later. She had a weird half smile on her face and said, someone put something on your car. Judging by her look, she knew it wasn't good. She went out to see every inch of her car was covered in naked dolls. There were hundreds of them. Cabbage Patch, Barbies, baby dolls, you name it, it was there. They all had different shapes and sizes. The only thing they all had in common was that they were completely naked. It took 55 trash cans to get rid of them. She was scared. In the nights that followed, she began to get very creepy calls at around 4:15 AM. It was a voice that would ask her if she liked the gift. The calls got angrier and more abusive as the nights went on, and then one night at 4:15 AM, the phone rang and all she heard was popping noises, no voices, and then the phone hung up. It's been 9 years since then and she hasn't been called since. She's curious about what happened, but also very glad it's all over. Next up at number 4 now, we have The Creature. This story was told by a woman who worked at a group home for disturbed youth. She said that 15 years ago she was sitting in the hallway and she just felt like she was being watched all night. It wasn't the kids, they were all in bed. It was an almost physical sensation, an unseen pressure pushing down on her. She cleaned out the linen closet in the hallway and left the door open turned when she was done. The hallway was so narrow that the door blocked it completely. Now, to her surprise, that feeling of being watched disappeared, like a switch being flipped. Happy, she continued on like this for 2 more nights, and then, on that 3rd night, she was doing bed checks when something in the hallway caught her eye. She slowly turned her head to look down the hallway and froze. The linen closet door was now halfway open, and there was a tall, elongated creature hunched over the back of the door, gripping it, its head peering out over it. It didn't have a face or clothes, but it was flesh-colored with elongated arms and legs. It stood at least 7 foot tall. Despite not having a face, she knew that it was staring at her. She ran to the staff office and sat huddled in the corner for 6 hours until the relief staff came. She told nobody but her family, and now all of us. At number 3 now we have The Watcher. This one comes from Reddit user Baby Butter Blues. She said that after leaving college she got a job as a nanny for 2 elementary age girls. For the parents' anniversary they went on a week-long cruise, and so she babysat the kids. For the first few nights the 8-year-old would go into her room multiple times a night and wake her up. It was obvious she hadn't pre-planned what she was going to give as her reason for waking her up, so she would just stumble through an excuse on the spot, like, I just wanted to make sure we're still going to the park tomorrow. The babysitter figured the girl was just missing her parents and feeling a bit unsettled, so she let it slide at first. However, by the 4th or 5th time she'd had enough. She told the girl not to wake her unless it was for an emergency. With that she went to sleep for a few more hours. It wasn't to last though. Around 5 AM she woke up, but there wasn't any obvious reason for it. She just felt strange. She turned over and almost jumped out of her skin. The girl had brought over a chair right next to the bed and was staring at the babysitter. Her long black hair was draped over her expressionless face. The babysitter asked what she was doing. The girl simply said, I just thought it would be fun to watch you sleep. I didn't wake you. That is where the story ends, but I presume at that point the babysitter was just sprinting down the road. That's what I do. Next up at number 2 now we have the tapping. This one comes from Reddit user Ilanko. He said that his job in Canada involves him looking after a factory. On one winter night it reached minus 30 degrees Celsius. It was a rough shift. One of his co-workers told him she'd cover him while he went for a quick nap in his car. He parked across the street from the plant so that his supervisor couldn't see him on the camera. With that he fell asleep quickly. However, just 15 minutes later he was woken up to the sound of tapping. It was around 3 AM, and by the time he pulled himself together and looked around he saw, well, nothing. The parking lot was big and empty, but there was nobody there at all. Whoever tapped on his window must have been able to move incredibly fast or not even be human. He was too shaken to continue his nap and so decided to head back to work and tell his co-worker about what happened. She'd been working there longer and knew the area better. She didn't seem fazed when he told her what happened. She simply said, oh yeah, that happens all the time with everyone working the night shift. We don't know who or what it is. Can you even imagine? I think the scariest part of that is the possibility of it not being an animal or human. What do you guys think? I also think it was probably hiding under the car. How creepy is that? And finally, number 1 now we have the dispatcher. Ariadne Hayes said that he used to work as a police emergency dispatcher for the police department in his city. He was working overnight once when a woman called in to say her depressed husband had gone missing. The police asked around and found out that he sometimes liked to go to an old cemetery and just be alone. With this lead, they sent 2 officers out there to look for him. When they got there, they saw the door to an old stone mausoleum was cracked open. They went in and stumbled through the dark underground rooms surrounded by the tombs of the dead. Then one of their flashlights caught a figure standing at the very back. It looked like they had their guy. They were relieved. They walked towards him, but it wasn't until they were right next to him they realized they had got it all wrong. They had found the right guy, but he wasn't standing, he was hanging. The ceiling was so low to the ground that his feet were barely an inch off the floor. The officers hightailed it out of there and told the dispatcher this very creepy story.
And you may not want to leave your house ever again. Sound intriguing? I just went through puberty, jeez.
I couldn't even hear that.
That was a loud screech. This creature will make your skin crawl in at number 10, and we're talking about the Enya Chapapora. What the?
Ani Chapora.
Huh?
Ani Chapora.
Ani Chapora. And we're talking about the Ani Chapora, otherwise... Huh? Ani. What's ai? What's the heck?
Ai. It's the ai.
Hi.
The thing with the weird claw, the lemur.
I don't get it.
That's his name.
His name is I?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it was
I
like
wasn't trying to make a joke.
if there's like an
with the name.
expression. It's I.
No.
I.
Oi, oi.
Oi, oi, mate.